Now these dolphins are exhibiting a little bit of that channel stalking behavior, but at the speed that they're moving at right now, I'm going to assume that they're not actively hunting a fish, but instead what they're doing is probably trying to scare fish away from that seawall. So dolphins have a special sense they use to detect their prey. A lot of people like to compare it to the sonar that you would find on a submarine, and this sense is called echolocation. So dolphins will use a series of sounds like clicks and whistles that they send out into their environment. Those sounds will bounce off of objects around them, or echo, and those echoes will return to the dolphin, and it will give the dolphin a sense of what's around them in their environment and where their prey is. So a dolphin can actually detect a fish the size of a ping pong ball from about 100 yards away. And the reason these dolphins like to swim against the seawall, often they'll bob down to the bottom of the bay as well to spook those fish away from those solid surfaces, is because when those fish are pressed against that seawall, are pressed flat against the bottom of the bay, the sounds bouncing off of those fish are also going to bounce off the seawall or the bottom of the bay. So the dolphins like to spook those fish out into the open water where they can detect them more easily using their echolocation. So dolphins actually detect these sounds, the sounds that they emit that bounce back to them, using not just their ears, but their teeth and their jaws as well. So those teeth act as a really small point to detect those sounds, kind of like an antenna. And then it sends vibrations through their jawbone into their inner ear. And now it might not look like dolphins have ears because they're so smooth all over, but they do have inner ears, and they have a little spot on the side of their head that acts as a connection point to the outside world. And their sense of hearing is actually about 7 times better than that of humans. So they are great at both sending these sounds out into their environment and then picking up on them as they bounce back. Now I mentioned some of those really smart hunting strategies that dolphins have. And that's because they are really smart. They actually have the second largest brain to body mass ratio of any animal, with the first being humans. So give yourself a pat on the back for being number 1, guys. But if these dolphins are coming up, and you see they have kind of a round head right between their snout and their blowhole. That blowhole is the hole in the top of their head that they're using to breathe with. That round head actually isn't caused by their big brain. That is its own organ that is called a melon. So this melon is a big lump of fluid and fat that they can contort with their muscles, and it helps them point those sounds in specific directions while they're using their echolocation. That's because sounds travel a lot more efficiently through fluids and solids. So you can think of it as like a radar dome on the top of the dolphin's head. And their brain actually sits behind that big dome shape. They really do use their melons, yep. So if you look at a dolphin's skull, it's actually going to be a little bit concave in the front because their brain sits a little bit farther back than you might think. So they're going to have extra space actually built into their skull for that big lump of flesh. Now if you guys are observing these dolphins come up, you're going to see their dorsal fin, and you might notice it looks a little bumpy, or it might have some notches in on the rear side of that dorsal fin. That's another way that our Sarasota Dolphin Research Program can identify these dolphins. So I mentioned that freeze branding technique. They have freeze branded about 60% of the dolphins in Sarasota Bay, but for the other 40%, they use their dorsal fins to identify them. So every dolphin will have an individual set of nicks, notches, bumps, and ridges in those dorsal fins. And those markings are unique to each dolphin, kind of like our fingerprints are unique to us. So the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program will actually take pictures